Hey, it's Jody, and this is Coffee Conversations, a show where I speak to a series of inspirational women who are challenging the status quo. On today's episode, I speak to Hafsa Kamara about her advocacy work, her affinity to her Sierra Leonian culture, and a little bit about FGM and period poverty. So let's begin. So you are a Sierra Leonean Olympian who competes over the 100 and 200. However, your interests and talents lie far beyond just track. You're an advocate for children's education and the continuing fight against FGM, whilst also working within marketing and brand development to help people tell their story effectively. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yes.
First things first, are you a coffee drinker?
I was heavily.
Did you cut caffeine?
No, I didn't. I switched to black tea.
Okay.
Now I'm heavily black tea. So it's
I'm gonna let you off. So what was your go-to coffee order before?
Just straight black.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yes. See, so I used to do the whole sugar and cream, and then I realized, okay, I'm lactose intolerant, and the whole bunch of sugar thing didn't.
I did the exact same thing. I used to drink like lattes, and I'm super intolerant to dairy, and it just wasn't. So I cut it back to black as well.
Exactly, and then after that, you don't really get the taste of the coffee.
Exactly, you're just getting a whole bunch of other. I'm with you entirely on that.
Yeah. So
Amazing.
just straight black, and same thing with my tea. Just
same thing
black,
with your tea.
Straight.
Perfect. Simple is definitely the best way to go.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess we start right at the beginning. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into track? And what were your experiences growing up?
Well, for me, I'm of course Sierra Leone descendant, I'll say.
Yeah.
People often think I was born in Sierra Leone, and this is I always try to correct it. I was actually born in Virginia, US.
Okay.
But I did spend time as a kid in Sierra Leone. We have kind of a tradition where once you're born somewhere, especially in the first world, whether it's Europe or the US, you're sent to be raised by your grandparents in Sierra Leone. So
that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. So it typically, I would have been in Sierra Leone from the time that I was a kid up until about 16, 17, came back, finished high school, go to college, and just, just be in the American culture. And it's a way for us to maintain our culture, and because our parents at the time are just going to, be working and try to maintain the home in the U.S., and won't have that time to teach us certain things about about our heritage and traits. So I was sent to Sierra Leone with my younger siblings, and it just so happened the Civil War was happening at the same time. I was there. Yeah, it was, and I was young, so parts of that I don't remember. Because I'm a U.S. citizen, I had to then be sent back to the U.S., and which was a fortunate situation because the trauma, the whole crisis there it has affected Sierra Leone to the point where it's like PTSD that has been translated generations down, and those are times in which you realize how important it is for you to have a family elsewhere and that you can then return back to in a home elsewhere. But so that was the beginning of my life. And the funny thing is, I used to run track back in Sierra Leone, but I didn't remember.
That's so funny.
Yeah. How I found out was one time I played a lot of sports growing up. So basketball, soccer, all that stuff. But I never did track until my sophomore year in high school. And so I was doing track, but mainly to stay in shape for basketball. And my older sister, came and she showed me a picture of myself in our national stadium. So we have the national stadium, and they used to hold little track meets with the little girls and everything like that.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I was part of the orange team, and I'm like, a picture of me standing at the stadium with the ribbon. They're like, yeah, you used to be one of the fastest girls when you used to run. And I was like,
in you from the very beginning.
Yeah. I was like, well, I didn't remember that. Let me really take it seriously now. Mm-hmm. So in high school, I started taking it seriously, mainly because I was getting a lot of injuries during playing basketball. And, my dad was very strict. I mean, very disciplined, I'll say. Right. I grew up in a African Muslim household. Right. So as far as being a woman, a girl, like, it was kind of like you are supposed to just go to school and come back home. Right. And for him, that was his best way of protecting us. But it can limit you in, like, the things that you can do and the things that you can try to achieve. For sure. So I was very stubborn. I used to sneak out to track practice. Oh my goodness. Actually. I would sneak out to track practice and track meets. He would think I was at school doing some type of, like, tutoring, because I was good at, like, in school as far as my grades. So he thought I was at an award show or something like that, but I was actually at, like, 2-3 hours away in a different town running and competing. And I luckily had a younger siblings who would back me up. Just kind of, so, kudos to them. But, like, they would back me up, be like, oh, yeah, she's still at school. Yeah, like, she's coming. It's fine. And, yeah. Or, like, open the back door, and I'll sneak upstairs. I'm like, yeah, I've been here the whole time. And it took some time for him to kind of get open to the idea of me running track. Right. And it really wasn't until I started getting scholarships to college that he was like, okay.
He kind of saw, like, the doors that it was opening for you.
Yeah. But at that point, I had gotten so tired of fighting to try to run track that I actually did not want to run track anymore in college.
Oh my goodness.
And it took my sister-in-law, who really was like, she was always showing up to my track meets. She was always, like, coming to practice. During the summertime, she would have me do 400 repeats out of nowhere. Goodness. Hated it. I mean, that's your thing.
No, I know. I don't even know how I found myself in this world.
But you're doing great. But I, on the other hand, being dragged to a track during the summer, hot, humid summer in New Jersey, was horrendous. But she was passionate and dedicated and saw the potential I had. That's so good. So finally, I was like, sure, I'll do it. Because, I mean, they're paying for it. And I wanted to go to nursing school. So I was like, so they can pay for nursing school. That's great. And so once I got into the NCAA, it became like, it changed my whole perspective on running track. Because I was like, I get to meet new people, have a whole team, travel the world, travel around the U.S. Yeah. Yes. I was like, I've never, and not on my dime either.
Exactly. That is the greatest thing.
That is the best thing. Like, you get to really do new experiences, absolutely, all while representing your school, your heritage, your name, your country. And that is actually, it was not until my sophomore year in college that I actually decided, hey, I want to actually pursue the Olympics. Some people had the dream at a young age, and for me, it didn't come until later on. And from then, it was just being disciplined and focused towards getting towards that. And I mean, it's led me to here, really.
Which is incredible. I love that whole story. Obviously, like, your heritage is super important to you. Did that connection that you felt to back home, because I know you do a lot of advocacy work within Sierra Leone, like, is that connection to back home kind of what drew you into getting into that advocacy work? And I mean, obviously your journey into track seems like it was a little different to other people's, and you were doing a bunch of other stuff. Is that connection back home what drew you to do other things?
Okay. So it definitely, my heritage, my culture did draw that influence, because oftentimes I tell people, yes, I'm an American, but I was raised in a Sierra Leone household.
Right, for sure.
Like, when we would when we were home, we weren't allowed to speak English. Like, you can only speak Creole. So our native national language was and it really, it made a difference too when it came time to not only advocate for Sierra Leone, but to get to know my Sierra Leone officials and teammates who are home based, as we call them. Because it was like, for them, they see me as just still American. Like, as far as they know, I have an American passport. I live in America, so it was kind of like breaking down the barriers was started because my father made sure that I knew our language and our culture. So then it made it easier for me to then understand the perspectives, understand the stance that they're currently in, the struggles, without me even presently being there. I can hear their stories and be like, well, that's the story of my sister, that's the story of my cousin or my brother or my mother. And like, it's to harness that type of culture, to harness that heritage is something that I'm grateful started at a young age. So now, like, I feel as if my perspective in the world is broadened, and like it's broadened in that sense, because it's not just one way and lifestyle of living. So when I advocate for Sierra Leone, it's as a Sierra Leonian, and not just as an American.
I love that. So one of the biggest things that you advocate for is FGM, which, as I understand, is a big problem in Sierra Leone itself. Can you, number one, talk us through what exactly FGM is? And what you're currently doing within that, and how we can get involved as well.
So FGM, which stands for female genitalia mutilation, or FGC, which is female genitalia cutting, is basically a social norm in a sense. I don't want to classify it as a tradition or a culture, because it's a practice that is done to there's different types of it. There's 4 different types of female genitalia mutilations. And within those, you're basically cutting or removing the external genitalia organs of females. And it's a practice that has definitely been in depth within most African, Asian, Arab societies as a way to either a religious practice, their belief actually is as a religious practice, or as a way to prepare women, prepare girls into womanhood, or to prevent them from what is it called? What am I word I'm trying to say? Partaking in like sexual acts outside of marriage. It's a form of thought of like modesty. I mean, I can continue on and on a list of the beliefs around it, but at the end of the day, it's basically an infringement on the rights of a woman and their body, and what they can do with it and what they choose to do with it. And that is it's a practice that in some cultures from the very beginning, like infancy, by the time like they're just a couple of days old, it's being done. Up until the age of womanhood, it's being practiced. And it's a very, like, we briefly talked about it a couple times, and, I'm sure, you've done research on it, and just the description alone, without even looking at the images, is harsh, to understand. It's harsh to put into reality that women are constantly being put under this type of circumstance. Girls are constantly being put under this circumstance. And in Sierra Leone, there's about 80 to 90% of women are being put through this act. And why I try to stay away from saying traditional or cultural, because there's an aspect of, especially I'm speaking from Sierra Leone society here, where there's a women's society. There's actually a secret women's society, in which it leads into the Bondo Society, which prepares girls for adulthood by teaching them the culture, teaching them manners, teaching them kind of like when you're going through what's it called, debutante,
right?
And kind of like an opening, and it's frowned upon if you don't go through that type of process. The reason why I refrain to say culture or tradition, because there's aspects of the society that is rich in who we are and where we stem
in
from.
The culture.
It's ingrained, but it's a specific act that, with no matter the culture, the tribe, the country, the religion, it's harmful to girls.
Absolutely.
And cause physical and psychological damage. And I think oftentimes when we look to advocate against acts that are done within a culture, within a tradition, it's kind of put it in a perspective of their shoes, where like my grandma or my mom or my like aunt have gone through this, in a sense of that is who they grew up to become. Like, this is who they are. This is what their culture stemmed from. This is what they know. And then, so if we're coming in to kind of bring that knowledge and let them know, like, hey, this type of practice is wrong, it's like not to throw away your culture and religion, because we need that. But how do we then maintain a culture and religion that then empowers girls and women?
Absolutely.
And this is, I think that's the best way, as we talk about advocating for it, is gaining the knowledge of where that practice stems from and why we have women advocating for FGM. Like, why is that? Why do we have older women even practicing? Why do we have medical doctors doing these procedures in hospitals? There's more to it than it just being, oh, well, that's what they do in the village. That's what they do in their culture. Absolutely. No, it's ingrained, and it's not something we throw away, but have to understand and let them see, like, okay, then how do we protect our girls?
Absolutely.
Like, how do we protect our future generations? So, I have a resource provided, putting the link in my Instagram, and I've also sent it to you, Jody, that has a information infographic on all the basic details that you would need to know about FGM. Also some resources, both an organization called One Girl at a Time, which was started by one of my mentors, Alimatu de Monarque. I always mess up her last name, so I'm sorry. Sorry, but she's actually based in the UK.
Oh, really?
The UN, she's worked with the UN Women, she's worked with other major organizations in pushing towards officially having a law that bans FGM all around the world, but specifically in Sierra Leone. And developing an organization that will basically educate women about their rights to their bodies, educate them about how to take care of their bodies, about who they are, and providing them with the skills that they need in order to stand up for themselves, in order to have a voice, I would say, all while maintaining the culture. I think oftentimes, like, we need to, because we need to realize, like, there are people in Sierra Leone who are against this act themselves. Absolutely. So they're the best ones to convince those who are for it. And we, from the outside, can provide that information that they need in order for them to be able to basically stand on solid ground in doing so. But I have links.
Great. And I'll definitely provide them. And I think, as you said, I think what you're saying definitely applies to all advocacy work, like things that are deeply ingrained in people's almost identity. I think there's this is something I've spoken about before, problem with the West coming in and like dictating, and that's not our role. Like, it's about empowering and raising up and providing that education, rather than just going in and being like, no, like, because it feels judgmental as well. Like, who are we to judge what other people are doing? So for sure, my biggest struggle, and a lot of people's struggle, is like, let's not go into people's countries and cultures and dictate what is right and wrong. Let's empower and support the people on the ground that are there doing the work themselves within their own cultures.
Yes.
And lift those people up and almost raise their voices. I feel like that should be our job from the outside, is to just spotlight people's voices who are doing it, who know the traditions, who are living that experience themselves. Like, I think that's the most powerful thing that we can do. I know also you have recently, or you're doing some work within period poverty, which is something that I am also doing a lot of work with at the moment as well. It's another huge issue within, female issue is this issue of period poverty, and I feel like it's something that is not very spoken about in the Western world, but it's such a huge issue globally. Can you talk us a bit through what period poverty is and what the work you are doing within period poverty?
So an aspect like of period poverty, and that's actually the first time I've actually heard it phrased in that term, as far as period poverty. I like it. But in the sense of giving young girls the comfortable platform and the information that they need to know as far as how to handle their periods. Because like you said, it's not a topic that, like, is heavily talked about in the Western world. Because if you even think about it, like here in the US, like you have to pay for your pads and your sanitary, like the pads and tampons and stuff. That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Like that's ridiculous. Because it's like, that is a biological experience that women have.
That half the population
from the
have.
Exactly. From the moment that they start puberty, for the first time they see their period, to like once they hit menopause, like that's a whole lifetime, basically.
Absolutely.
In which a woman is seeing their period, and you're saying like, okay, we're gonna charge you for that. So then we live in a world where a lot of I would say acts and laws and stuff like that in different worlds, in like Sierra Leone and different countries, are followed and replicated by that of the US. Because they're trying to live the democratic lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So acts in where it's like, okay, girls have to pay for have to pay for their pads and have to pay for the sanitary pads and things like that, is the same thing that's happening in Sierra Leone, but it's even more detrimental there, where they don't have the resources to pay for those things. And I'm currently working with a business called Uman for Uman, which is providing sanitary kits, actually, which is 3 pads with different sizes, along with information on how to use it and reuse it. And it lasts for 2 years.
Amazing.
And for us, like, it's us paying $15 for it. And $15 and it lasts you 2 years. That's in $15. Like, I actually did the math for how much it takes to spend, like, to buy one pad, I think like a 30 pack of pads in the US. It lasts you maybe like 3 months, and then multiply that by like throughout the year, and you're spending about 20 to 30. But that's only if you buy like one pad. But then imagine buying the different sizes plus the tampons, all that type of stuff. Like, it adds up.
Really does.
And like, so like for Sierra Leoneans, girls and women, to have something that will basically be able to utilize for a long time helps. Because in the schools, there's no running water. In Sierra Leone schools, there's no running water. So imagine like going to school and like being on your period and not being able to use the bathroom. There's no water to clean yourself. So it's just like, it's a very uncomfortable situation already to be on your period, but even more so at a young age, when you don't know what's going on with your body, where it's constantly changing, and no one talks about it.
Exactly. There's such a stigma around discussing it as well.
Exactly, because it's thought of as being a dirty,
absolutely
dirty, a dirty experience. And really, it's your body cleansing itself. If people really look at it, for us, it's like, it's quite the opposite. So like advocating for Uman for Ruman, which actually translated, it's in Creole, our native language. Uman for Ruman means women for women.
Amazing.
And I was speaking to her and I asked her, because she's running it as a business. So rather than a nonprofit and providing it for free, she's running it as a way to basically have a women's business. And I asked her why do it in that format, and her response was, we need to kind of steer away from the whole charity aspect. As a country, as women, as people who have the minds and the capabilities of doing things. So yes, this is something that we can provide to our women, but it also needs to be a way for us to empower ourselves and show us that we can be in this field. Because so she'll give these pads to the girls, but also let them know, like, okay, this is how it's used. And you know, and she's also an environmental student. I didn't even mention her name. Haja Aissatou Ba. She's an environmentalist student who actually got a scholarship to actually study here in the U.S. She's a senior right now, and at Skidmore College in New York. And the products are environmental friendly because you can wash and reuse them.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why she decided to do that was because when it rains in Sierra Leone, well, we only have 2 seasons, and that's summer and rainy season. Yeah, that's it. And when it rains heavily. And so all the trash and the pollution surfaces from the streets. And in that, you see baby diapers, you see pads, you see all the sanitary products being up on the surface. And it's bad for the environment, but also bad for the people living within that environment to live in such a state. So I'm really excited to like be partnering with her and actually starting a fundraiser in March during Women's Month to advocate for 100 pads for 100 girls, 100 kits for 100 girls, providing this for them for free, and us raising the money like to help her produce those products and allow 100 girls to not only get them but also the education and information that comes with it.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, no, that is such an amazing initiative, and I love that she's doing it as a business. I think moving away from that idea of charity, I think that's I think that's really empowering and kind of bringing business back to women. Less of a question, more of an observation point, I guess, discussion point. I think this is something that you've touched on in the past, and actually my mind was triggered when we were talking about not running things as a charity, is moving away from this idea of African countries being in need of charity and being a place of poverty, and celebrating them as the rich places of culture that they are. I just feel like that is a subject I would like to just touch on right at the end. I think we can get so carried away about talking about the issues and, you know, like we were saying earlier, empowering and embracing African voices rather than going in and dictating, but also celebrating African countries as a place of extreme beauty, and like the countries that they are, and moving away from this constant dialogue of third world and poverty, and these constant images of that being the only thing that we see. And I feel like that's something that you have touched on in the past. I don't know if there's anything that you would like to add, but I just wanted to make sure that we just touched on that right at the end, because as much as the advocacy work is so important and the charity work is so important, I do love that idea of things being a business and bringing wealth back into the country rather than it being a constant source of charity, and this just feeding into that constant narrative.
I actually got goosebumps when you said Africa and its beauty, because it's one of it, if not the land in the world where you go in different regions of it. You know, you do have snow-capped mountains in Africa. Mm-hmm. You do have the deserts. You have the tropical areas. Like, it's so diverse as a continent. And it's so rich as far as resources. And there's an article out, and many people have said it, where it's like Africa is the richest continent in the world as far as if we're just talking natural resources in that way. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like, this conversation's been had multiple times. You know, we've talked about it. I've had it with other people in the sense of their perspective of what happiness and freedom can be kind of skewed when you think of it specifically just in a Western ideology.
Absolutely.
And so you can see Africans then being like, oh, well, you know, you don't have credit, or like, you don't have the latest cars, or you don't have this. In Sierra Leone, you build your own house with your own hands, however you want the layout. It's your house. Government, you don't have to pay rent. You don't have to, your land is passed down to you from your lineage. Yeah. Like, it's your land from your great-great-grandfathers. It's your land. Unless you decide to sell it, like, it's yours. It belongs to you. If a father passes away, his wife and his children are taken care of. They have a roof over their head. They have a community who can supply them with food and support. They have land that they can farm in. My grandmother was from a farming family. So then she had to interact with all the other tribes, and therefore became fluent in all the languages all the other tribes. And she's bilingual, like trilingual, or how many languages, different languages there are in Sierra Leone. She speaks them all fluently. Amazing. So when we think of that in that aspect, it's like there's so much, like you're saying, there's so much richness within Africa that we then have to take our mindset out of the poverty, like, let it not be just it. The way we look at poverty, let it not just be as far as financial base.
Materialistic poverty.
Yes. Because that can come and go, and that changes. You know? So what is there that continues, that is actually truly rich in our lives? And that's like happiness. That's family. That's community. Those are things.
Yeah.
Yes. Grounded in faith. And those are things that you can find heavily and richly in a continent like Africa.
Yeah.
So when we think of then businesses, every resource that majority of this Western world uses stems and grows in Africa.
Absolutely.
So one thing I was telling one of my friends the other day was that the way to really empower Africans, who, especially those who are home-based, is to show them that the value that they stand on, not just the ground or their feet, but within themselves. That's something that has been constantly been stripped from them, from stuff that they read, stuff that they see on TV, stuff that people say. But if they truly listen to themselves, truly focus on what they have to offer, you'll see that they have everything that they need. They don't have to look elsewhere to grow business. They don't have to look elsewhere to provide education for their children. They can do that within their own backyards. Sierra Leone, Sierra Leone actually had the first college, the greatest, one of the most influential colleges. I forgot the year, but it's called Frobe College, where people from the Middle East, where people from North Africa and all parts of the world were coming to study. And that college still, like the location of it still existed, but it's dismantled in the sense of trying to replicate a Western way of education. So like I said, it's going back to seeing who we were, where we stem from, the land that we stand on, in order to uplift and empower ourselves in all aspects of life.
Amazing. That is honestly, completely, wholeheartedly agree with all of those sentiments, and that is such a lovely note to end on. I liked how that wrapped everything up nicely. So I usually ask some like quick fire questions just right at the end. It's just lighten the load a little. So it's just 5 quick fire questions. So actually, this will be a good one. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Where would it be? I think it would be Madagascar, as weird as it sounds.
No, I really want to go to Madagascar. Yeah.
I think we should go to Madagascar because, one, as a kid, you know, with the movie, it was like, oh, Madagascar, that's like fun, like, you know, the little animated animals. But then also the thought of it, just the location of it. Like, it's a remote island off the coast.
And I feel like the natural beauty there would be just, like, overwhelming.
I think that deserves a planned trip to look at what tickets are looking like for Madagascar.
I'm absolutely with you on that one.
Yeah.
What are you currently reading or watching?
So I'm currently reading a book called A Long Way Gone by Ishmael Bia actually. So he was a Sierra Leonian child at the age of 12 or 13 who was there and lived in Sierra Leone during the Civil War, and ended up becoming a child soldier. And his description, he's actually, I think, relocated now here in California. But his description in the book of his experience, like, I got to chapter 2 and I was in tears. Like, it's deep. It's very, so basically kind of gives you a perspective from a 12 or 13-year-old boy.
That is so
living
powerful.
It's so powerful. From losing his family to then traveling with just him and his brother and some friends, to then losing connection with all of them and him just being by himself. And I'm taking it like 2 chapters at a time because, like I said, it's very deep and very intense.
Yeah.
It is. Like, each chapter I'm crying. So I'm like, oh, I can't be. It's too much. But it also gives me time to reflect on it because I have older siblings who weren't U.S. citizens who were still in Sierra Leone during the war and didn't come until the end of it. And I've asked them to share stories and they can't.
But it's such a traumatic.
They're not. It's so traumatic. And like the story that Ishmael is telling is the story of that of my older siblings, the siblings who basically raised me as a kid. So it definitely has a lot of close impact and hits home as I read it.
Oh my goodness! I'm gonna add that to my reading list. Every time someone asks this question, I'm like, I need to read that book. But it sounds like I need to be in like an emotionally stable place. Before I read that. But that sounds really powerful. Have you picked up any new hobbies or habits within the last year?
Oh, I picked up juggling. So actually it was funny how I came about it. I had some oranges after practice and I was like, wait. No, actually, and then I watched a video of Sydney McLaughlin juggling. And I was like, it doesn't look that hard. Like, I could do that.
I can do that.
So I had some oranges. I'm like practicing and I'm like, okay, this is a little harder than I thought. So I went to YouTube and I found the best juggler in the world and practiced from him with 2 balls and it went to 3. And then I actually posted the video on Instagram and tagged him in it. And he's actually based in California. I didn't know that. And he sent me actual juggling balls. It was amazing. Like, hey, I saw your video. Yeah, he was like, let me help you with your new hobby.
That is so
cool.
cool.
I legit randomly, it's pretty funny, but randomly, when anytime I'm in the middle of doing work, like digital marketing, and I just need a break, I'll just pick up my juggling balls and just practice moving around with it and stuff. But it's my new favorite thing to do.
That's a great one. I need to pick up juggling now. We'll ask you this one. Are you a stickler for schedule or more of a wave rider?
I personally like to think I'm a wave rider, but those around me, think I'm a stickler for schedule and a little OCD with organization and things. I would admit that when I get to like cleaning and organizing my house, like there's a routine where like if I don't follow that routine,
I feel it.
Everything's being thrown out. You know, everything. We're just gonna start from scratch.
Start again.
Yes. But I do like to purposely spend some time just kind of being free, you know, waking up. Like, I'm in Long Beach right now, so I thankfully, like, walking distance from the actual beach. And I'll just, like, one day wake up and just go for a walk there and, like, unplanned. And I'm like, look at me.
Yeah.
Being
so
free.
Spontaneous.
Yeah. Calling my friends, like, guys, guess what? I'm outside.
I'm actually outside.
I'm doing something different today. But yeah, I think like I try to force myself to be a little bit more flexible. I think also as athletes, we get so used to being disciplined.
We're very regimented, I feel.
Yeah. And even in off season, it's like you forget you're in off season and that you can actually kind of do a little bit more and do a little try other stuff. But yeah.
For sure. I can definitely relate to a lot of that. And last question, this is the one I always end on, but I feel like we kind of answered this at the beginning. Are you a tea or coffee girl?
Okay, I'm definitely a tea, but okay, I will say this. On like weeks in which I really have to like get stuff done and focus, I'll bring out the coffee. Yeah. And when I bring out the coffee, my friends are like, oh. it's one of those weeks. Yes, it is. I'm getting shit done. But yeah, heavily tea though. But yeah, I have coffee in here just in case.
For emergencies. It's always good to be prepared.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been...
Thank you for the invite.
Very insightful. And I will make sure that I post all the links and everything and information along with the episode so people can, you know, find out more information about what we just talked about and see how they can get involved, hopefully.
Yeah, then that's the best we can do is share information and encourage others to do the same.
Absolutely.
So yeah, makes a difference. Sure. Thank you so much, Jody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.